Hey, Tracy,
Hey,
are we the only ones on the meeting?
no, there was a bunch of other people and all of a sudden it closed. I don't know what happened.
Are you not at the office?
No, I'm never in the office.
Oh, I thought you went down there with them.
No, 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 no. Hold on, I'm texting Frank. Both Sean and I are waiting. Oh, he says yes, we are having issues.
Hmm.
I ain't got time for their issues.
How's business?
It's good.
Is it? Well, that's good.
Yeah,
I'm glad it's good for you.
it's good. I'm busy. We're busy. I'm grateful. But
Hmm.
yeah,
Are you making a lot of outbound calls every day?
no. I'm calling my database uh based on my list from Macy, who I'm supposed to be calling and talking to.
Right.
Oh, here we go.
I'm sorry, guys, we're back. We're back. Did you know that AI is set to create 90?
Hi, this is Brian. Welcome to Philosopher's Notes TV. Today we're going to do classic book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. As always, great book, Philosopher's Notes. We've got about 10 of my favorite big ideas here in this PDF. We've got a workbook with all 100 of these PDFs. But we could talk about the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People for roughly a year and get through all the big ideas in it. We've got 10 minutes, so we will jump in. I will say that this was one of the first books. It was actually probably the first self-development book I read way back in probably 1995 that totally inspired me to realize that I can develop my character and transform my life. And deeply inspiring for me, so I'm excited to do this note and to share some of my favorite big ideas. Really quickly, we'll go through the 7 habits themselves, and then I'll go into detail on a few of my favorite ones. So habit number 1 is to be proactive rather than reactive. Habit number 2 is to begin with the end in mind. Habit number 3 is to put first things first. Habit number 4 is to think win-win. Habit number 5 is to seek first to understand, then to be understood. Habit number 6 is synergy. And habit number 7 is to sharpen the saw. Those are the 7 habits of highly effective people. And Stephen Covey is all about character development. He talks about in the book the fact that private victory precedes public victory. First, we must master ourselves. Then we can experience success in the outside world. Too often people look for the get-rich-quick stuff or the success principles that will catapult us into success. And he says, no, 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 no. You've got to start with character development. You've got to start with who you are as a human being. And he looks at the classic wisdom over the last, hundreds and thousands of years that we can translate into our lives today. And that's what the 7 habits are all about. So habit number 1, be proactive. Essentially, this means be proactive. Be a creator of your reality, not a reactive victim to life's circumstances. Right? And he talks about Pavlov's dogs. And if you remember, they were conditioned such that a bell was rung whenever they ate, and they learned to salivate every time the stimulus of a sound of the bell was ringing. They would associate that with being fed, and they would salivate. Right? They were reactive. They were conditioned. Well, most of us are conditioned the same way. Someone cuts us off in traffic, we respond the same way all the time, with anger, with frustration, etc. Well, he says we need to be proactive. We need to be able to step in between stimulus and response and choose our response. And he talks about the fact that, and a lot of people talk about this, and there's a reason why this is habit number 1. Everyone talks about the importance of being proactive. He says we need to be responsible, which can be broken down into 2 words, response able. able to choose our response versus simply reacting to the stimuli that come into our lives. So we want to be proactive. We want to be able to choose our response to any given situation. That's habit number one. Question for you is, how in your life are you being reactive? Can you see how you get triggered by life circumstances, and can you step in between stimulus and response and choose your response? Be able to respond appropriately. It's huge. Without that, none of this other stuff really matters, because if we're always subject to whatever's going on in our lives and then being a victim and blaming and criticizing, we're in trouble. We need to be proactive. That's habit number one. Habit number two is the idea that we need to begin with the end in mind. He says, and this is echoed throughout the literature, that everything is created twice. Once in our minds and then once in reality. Again in reality, right? Everything from these philosopher's notes to that book to this table, it was imagined and then it was created. He says we need to focus on what we want to see created in our lives. And if you think about it, most people spend more time, this is a hackneyed story, but most people spend more time planning their vacations than they do planning their lives. And the fact is that if those people spent as much time planning their lives, what they're here to do, as they do their vacation or the next car they're going to buy or whatever, they probably wouldn't need the vacation so desperately to escape the life they don't love. So we need to spend time imagining our ideal. Psychologists talk about this too, and we went off on it in the positive psychology push in the very beginning of Philosopher's Notes TV, where they call it best selves diary. It's one of the key ways to develop optimism is to imagine what your ideal is and then step forward into it. Really, really cool stuff. I dig it. And he has a really powerful exercise here too of imagining the ultimate end. So imagine that you're walking into a funeral and you realize that the funeral is for you. It's the end of your life, and who's there? And what do they have to say about you? What are the eulogies? What do the people closest to you have to say about you after you've passed away? That's the ultimate end in mind. You may not like to imagine other people and all that kind of stuff. Imagine what you would have to say about yourself in that case. But go to the end and then imagine, who are you? What do people have to say about you? And then ask yourself, am I living consistent with that ideal now? Am I in integrity on that front? This is an exercise I used to do with my friends and some clients I had. The first exercise I would do was the funeral exercise, and get a really clear sense on what your deepest values are. And if we say that it's important to us that we're compassionate and creative and giving ourselves to the world, but we wind up spending all of our time on the internet or watching TV or whatever it is, we need to get an integrity there and find how we can live our values consistently. If we want to be a loving parent or spouse, but we yell every time we come home from work, well, that doesn't work. We've got to take advantage of the opportunity to be in consistent moment to moment to moment. That's the idea of beginning with the end in mind. Habit number 3 is putting first things first. This is awesome. He wrote a whole book called that. I'm going to link to a big idea from this note where I can describe it in more detail, but he's got a great 4-quadrant model. Quadrant 2 is where we want to spend most of our time. It's where things are important but not urgent. Whereas quadrant 1 is important and urgent, like fire drills need to get done. Quadrant 3 is, what is it? It's urgent but not important, right? Things that never need to get done, but they need to get done now. Never a good place to spend our time. And then quadrant 4 is not important and not urgent, right? It's time-wasting distractions. We want to spend our time in quadrant 2. That's time spent doing things like this, immersing ourselves in wisdom, reading great books, meditating, exercising, spending quality time with our families. And the more time we spend in quadrant 2, the less time we need to spend in quadrant 1 and 3 of really urgent, time-pressing stuff, which is where most people who are stressed spend their time. I'll put a link to that. We can talk about that for a weekend. But awesome big idea. We want to think about how we can spend more time in quadrant 2 that really renews us and feeds our soul. He talks about the importance of saying no. We've got to plant our priorities deeply, know what we stand for, and be willing to say no to the stuff that isn't as important. Goethe says, where's that great quote? He says, things that matter most should never be at the mercy of things that matter least. We've got to know our priorities and live consistently with them. That's habit number 4. Habit number 5 is seek first to understand, right? So rather than looking to be understood, take some time and imagine the other person's perspective, understand where they're coming from. Awesome idea, pretty straightforward, big practice. Number 6 is the idea of synergy. And it comes from the Greek word to work together. And imagine you have one board and another board. The strength of those two boards, the amount of weight that those boards can sustain combined is greater than the amount of weight they could sustain separate, right? So it's 1 + 1 equals more than 2. 1 + 1 equals 3 or more, in fact. That's the idea of synergy. Really, really cool idea. It's got some great examples. You can check out the note in the book for about how nature works synergistically. That's habit number 6. Habit number 7, one of my favorites, sharpen the saw. He tells a great story of a guy who runs up and finds a guy in the forest who's sawing down a tree. And he's sawing. And the guy says to him, hey, you might want to slow down and sharpen your saw. I think that would really help you out. And the guy says, I'm too busy sawing down this tree to take the time to sharpen the saw, right? Well, that's not going to work. It's kind of like saying I'm driving too fast. I'm in too big of a hurry to stop for gas. At some point, the car is going to stop. You're going to burn out. We need to take the time to sharpen our saws, to renew ourselves. That's habit number 7. So that is a really, really quick look at the 7 habits of highly effective people. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you found one big idea that you can implement into your life starting today. If you want to share it below, please do. Have an awesome day. Share more soon. See ya.
All right. I like so I read this book so many years ago, like, good Lord, like 20 years ago, maybe, long time ago. Has anybody read the book? Yeah, what do you guys think of it?
I loved it. I read it maybe like 10 or so years ago. That's it, some of the things.
It's hard because it's a lot, right? There's a lot of stuff in that book. It's probably one of the bulkier books when it comes to information and all these things, but a lot of what it has is really good. The first one where he talks about being proactive, I think I feel like it goes without saying, but it's also probably the number one hurdle that everybody is unable to jump over because of the other thing he said is like, we're so busy. We're so busy that sometimes taking the action to do the things we need to do kind of falls on the wayside because we're trying to do all these other things that don't necessarily equate to the goals that we have. Are you conditioned and are you reactive? Most people in life are reactive. They react to the things that happen to them and they just kind of let life happen around them. So there's I can't remember the book, one of the books that I read, it talked about the man in the arena. And if you look at an arena, like a basketball arena, you have spectators, and then you have players, and you have people on the bench. And so in life, you get to choose who are you. Are you the spectator watching the game happen, or are you actually in the game, playing the game, making things happen, or are you on the bench waiting to get into the game? Like, where are you at? And I think it's interesting because I feel like we get to choose. And if you're a spectator, like in real life, if you wanted to be a basketball player and you're a spectator and you're like, well, I really want to play the game. I want to be a pro. How much action and effort would it take for you to become a pro basketball player? From wherever you're at in your life right now, it would be really hard. But it starts with action, and is it possible? It's 100% possible. It's just depending on where you're at in your life, it just may be way more difficult. Like let's say you're older and you're not in shape. Like there's all these different things that you equate to how hard is it going to be to get on the playing field to actually make the play. But things don't happen to you, they happen because of you. And I think when he was talking about proactiveness, that's something that I learned, I think I learned it from Tony Robbins, from one of his books, that I had to realize that I need to take responsibility for everything in my life and everything that's going on in my life. So I realized that things don't happen to me, they happen because of me. Because if something's happening, I had a hand in it at some point. Like I made a decision to put me wherever I was to make that happen. So like, let's say I'm in a bad job and I'm not happy with my job and my boss is doing all these terrible things to me. I can't control the actions of my boss, but I chose that role and I chose to be where I'm at today. And I can effectively make that change again. Same like with a relationship. If you're in a relationship and this person is doing bad things to you, that is their responsibility, the bad things they're doing, but you can choose to leave that. You can choose to move. Like, there's a lot of things that we don't take responsibility for. And so I try to live that on a daily basis. Sometimes I go a little overboard. And Tracy's like, you don't have to take responsibility for everything. That's not your fault. Well, it's all my fault. It's a very interesting conversation. But she's always right. Because it's true. It's not all your fault. The sky's not blue because of me, even though I want to take responsibility for it. Mind equals reality. I heard this recently where it talked about things happen twice. They happen first, you have like, and this is where I think if you go back to like The Secret, has anybody read The Secret?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Secret movie is great. I think they missed a few things on that, but it talked about how thoughts become things. And I 100% believe that, because anything that is anywhere on this planet had to start out as a thought first. And then the implementation and the action had to happen to make that become something. So I think it's really important to understand that your mind controls everything. The other thing I think is really important to understand is, it's a quote by Steve Jobs that he said, the world changes when you realize that everything around you was created by people that are no smarter than you. Everything on the planet, every building, every business, every company, Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, all of these people, nobody's way smarter than anybody else. It's just, what did they do differently? And if you take Jeff Bezos and Mr. Beast, like take those two people because they are billionaires on the planet. Mr. Beast can sell his YouTube channel for probably a couple of $1 billion at this point if he wanted to. The only thing they did that's probably different than what most people do to get to where they're at is they had consistency in behavior for an extended period of time that most people don't. Mr. Beast started when he was like 13 years old, and he was completely obsessed with YouTube, and that's all he did. And 15 years later, he was a billionaire. But like, he was focused and consistent on everything that had to do with YouTube. The same with Jeff Bezos. I don't know if anybody saw the meme where Jeff Bezos is sitting with this big old computer in Amazon, like written on the wall or whatever. It's like, that's where he started. Look how it's going. But it's the focus and the consistency of the behavior. And optimism, I think, is really powerful. It's very easy to let negative things creep into your mind. It's very easy to have a bad day. It doesn't take a lot to have a bad day, because something happens, depending on how big that situation is that happened to create a negative experience, you can choose to live in that, or you can choose to move forward. What are some of the other things here? I think we talked about this last week. I think, Sydney, that we were talking about having a meeting with yourself or whatever. And he's talking about spending time with yourself. Like, do you spend time with yourself? Do you really know yourself? Because as you start growing in life, like, you change. Like, I am a shadow of who I was back when I was like a teenager or in the military or anything like that. And do you realize the growth that you've had from where you started to where you're at? And you do that by spending time with yourself. And you can do it like people meditate, people do different things. So everybody knows I drive like an hour and a half to work every day and an hour and a half home. And so that gives me an opportunity to spend time with myself. And there's always times where I'm just sitting in the car with no podcast, no music, no nothing. And I basically have a meeting with myself to see where's everything at? How does this work? How can I improve? How can I do this? Depending on what's going on. So I think it's really important to spend time with yourself. And one of the things I do is I try to call myself out on some of my own shit, because we all have stuff. And it's like, I try to call myself out because I'm always trying to be better. But if I'm trying to do something in my mind and it's not working, it's like, what's wrong with you? Like, come on, let's figure this out. And so like, I have a little team meeting with myself, me and my 12 personalities. It's almost kind of fun. This is hard. When he talked about this, I think this is hard. Keep the end in mind. Because for me, the end is always changing. It's all like my goals and everything is always constantly evolving. So I always find that that's really hard to do. But if you can do this, I think this is really, really powerful. And I can do this with like money. Like, if you want to make $1 million, like, how do we back that up? to daily tasks. Like, that's really easy, but this is something I think if you read the book, you probably have to work on a little while. Learn to say no. So what I do, and I would love to hear if anybody else does something similar to this, is I reflect on my day. What did I do all day? How did my day work? Was it a good day? Was it a bad day? How could I have made my day better? What could I have said no to that would have improved my day? What did I do that probably wasn't the best thing that I could have done differently to make my day better and more powerful moving forward? What could I have said no to? Because if you are, whoever you are today, if you want to be somebody better or different tomorrow, there's something you're doing right now that's not serving you. That's something you have to say no to, right? So you have a meeting with yourself and you figure out, what did I do yesterday that I could have probably done a little bit better? You know, could I have spent more time with my family? Could I spend more time with the dogs? Could I have made a few more phone calls for my business? What could I have done? And then like, yeah, I could have made a few more phone calls. Well, what did I do that kept me from making those phone calls? And that's the thing that you can say no to, or restructure your day to make sure that you can do something like that. I thought this was funny when he said, seek first to understand. Everybody knows what that is, right? It's Keller Williams. It's on the belief system back there on the wall. It's communication. Seek first to understand. I always fall back to communication in all things, for the simple fact that every problem that is out there, I feel that you can lead back to a communication issue. We have a seller right now on a property that is just going like as sideways as you can get in a deal. It's not good. We're not happy. We're frustrated. We're trying to get rid of him. It's just a terrible situation. But it all comes back to communication. The guy is terrible at communication. He's an older guy that may have some like senility issues or whatever, but he doesn't remember things right. He thinks he knows better. It's a huge communication gap. Could we solve it? I don't know, but I'm like at the point where like, I don't want to solve it anymore. I'm moving forward. I'm moving on without this dude. But seek first to understand. I think in anything that you do in your life, as you're growing, that instead of letting yourself be reactive, when something happens, you step back and you take a look, and then you try to understand what's going on. And what I try to do is I try to see, where is this person coming from? Because a lot of times when things happen, we think they're happening to us, just like it's set up there. But a lot of times people do things because there's a selfish reason that somebody's doing something, either the way they treat you or the way they act or the way they talk. It's mostly self-serving, and we take it as they're doing that to us. It's not that they're doing it to us, it's they're doing it for them. Does that make sense? So if you step back and you're like, why is this happening? And I know Sean can probably resonate with this. It's like, we all have a story that we're telling ourselves about anything that's going on in our life. And that story may be true for us, but it's probably not true for the other person, because that person's telling themselves a story as well. So wherever you're at in your business, is I can say, well, what's your goal? And you say, my goal is X. Well, you're here. Why are you here? And when I ask you why you're at your point or your goal right now, whether it's you're exceeding your goal or you're not exceeding your goal, or you're falling behind in your goal, you're going to tell me a story. That story is true for you, but that's not true for everybody else. It's probably not the story I see. So you just have to realize communication is key, and realize that whatever story you're telling yourself, you can make it true, you can make it not true. Action can solve all of this. Sharpen your saw. What's that quote? It's a quote by Abraham Lincoln. It's like, if I had 6 hours to cut down a tree, I'd spend 5 hours sharpening my axe. Right? That's the same thing. And I find this is an interesting take on it, is that when agents join, they're like, can I have leads? I want leads. I need leads. And I've given agents leads in the past, and they don't get deals. Why didn't they get deals? I just gave them a bunch of leads. Well, they didn't get deals because their saw wasn't sharp, their axe wasn't sharp, because they're literally calling people and they don't know what to say and they don't know how to communicate with them. Because we all have leads, and if I give you a lead and you don't know what to say to it, is that really a lead then? Because you're gonna say the wrong thing, you're gonna burn that lead, you're gonna come back to me and go, those are bad leads. There's no bad leads, there's bad agents. You just don't know what to say. So the key is that learning scripts and dialogue. And so how do you learn scripts and dialogue? Let's say you don't have anybody to practice with. How would you learn scripts and dialogue? Anybody? Thoughts?
There's a template you guys have.
Yeah.
Or practice with one of your agents.
Huh?
Combine with somebody and one.
Yeah. What if you don't have anybody? Talk to yourself. So it's iteration, right? So if you want to become a better basketball player, what's the best way to become the best basketball player ever?
Practice every day.
Practice every day. Practice every day. So how would you practice every day in real estate? So I would say you have to go talk to as many people every day as you possibly can. Go find people. I don't care where you find them. There's ways to find people. If you can have more conversations about the real estate market, so sharpening your saw would be knowing the real estate market, knowing what's going on in the real estate market, and having conversations with people about the real estate market, and doing that as much as possible. Because if you have educated yourself on everything that has to do with real estate market, like if I say, oh, did you hear what Realtor.com did? Anybody know what Realtor.com did? There's a whole uproar about them and OpenAI. I haven't read the article, but I do know about it. So when somebody says, oh, what about this? Or what about that? And you know it, and you have the news, you have the information, you were Johnny on the spot, that's going to open doors for more conversations about what's going on in the world with real estate. And if you know all of this stuff and somebody talks to you, you now have a sharp saw, you have a sharp axe to where people are like, oh, wow, they know all of this stuff. What's going on with the buyer broker stuff, the NAR lawsuits, this and that, and da. I realized that when I first started that if I knew more than everybody else, it didn't matter how many homes I sold, somebody would want to use me. And I think with younger people, that if you can educate yourself at a level to where you can iterate things like I can, and even if you've never sold a house, people will want to work with you before they want to work with me because you're young, you're a go-getter, and you're smart, and they're like, wow, if she knows that, I want to work with that person, right? What was the thing? It's like, you don't want to work with somebody inexperienced. Like, would you want an inexperienced person flying a plane? Well, if that person could tell me what all those instruments did and knew everything about flying a plane, then absolutely. I'd rather have a young person doing it that knew their shit than an old person that wasn't sure, or like maybe, he's old, right? So it's just like, it's iteration, and it's doing something over and over and over and over and over again. And having those conversations over and over and over again. We could do a role play right now with anything, with for sale by owners, with expired listings, with open house, whatever right now, and I'd probably do pretty good. And the only reason I would do really good at it is because I've done so many times. So many times, I don't want to do it anymore. I'd rather just teach y'all to do it. And then you go get the money and bring it back to me. Like, that's the way I look at life now. But if you want to get to that level, it's just how many people have you talked to today? How many people have you talked to yesterday? How many people are you going to talk to tomorrow? That's going to sharpen your sword. The more conversations you can have, the better you're going to get. Any thoughts or concerns or questions on Zoom?
All good here.
All good there. How are you doing, Sean?
Making calls, doing okay.
What about you guys? Any plans for the holiday weekend? What do you got?
I'm thinking about going with my family to Santa Barbara on Sunday.
Okay,
I love Santa Barbara.
yeah,
It's amazing. I love the architecture over there.
yeah, close to the ocean, I love the ocean. That's
Does
cool.
anyone want to do an open house in Santa Cruz on Sunday?
Look at that.
It's too far.
Open house Senate. Way's too far. Money's too far?
No.
Or
Can I send this info to our agents?
I have one in escrow in Lake Elsinore right now.
Did we drive? I think I drove through Lake Elsinore. It's a weird place.
It's just north of Temecula.
Is that where the open house is?
No, I have one in escrow. When the gentleman said it's too far, I kind of laughed because I just,
Oh. Well, you're crazy, so that's different.
I'll be Santa Clarita.
We have somebody that'll do Santa Clarita. I'll connect you to.
okay, perfect.
Awesome. Anybody else have plans for this weekend? Hey, what are you guys doing?
She got another open house. I picked one up yesterday.
You what?
I picked up an open house yesterday.
Nice.
Dear Venice.
Okay. Nice area.
Anybody want to work security for her? I was gonna do that.
My hourly rate is really high, so I'm looking for it. What are you doing, Rose?
I'm sorry, I'm looking for the dates. No.
Did you open a house?
No, just security. She has open house.
Yeah. Any plans for this weekend?
Yes, probably.
Okay. All right. We're going to the beach and just hanging out and staying at home on Monday because, people driving around, it's like amateur hour, it's a little crazy, so. Anything else before we wrap up? I mean, I think the book is pretty straightforward. I would definitely get it and read it. It's kind of a longer book to read, but I think has a lot of value and it definitely helps out. So I hope some of this helped out. Anything else before? Yes.
For Memorial, we want to thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Frank.
Well, thank you, Sean. Sean, you were in the Air Force, right?
Yeah, I was in the Air Force.
Yeah. Hey, you said it, not me. All right, guys, we got a little clap with you, Sean. Even though it's the Air Force. All right, guys, thank you so much for coming. Let's play this last video and get out of here and have a great weekend.
See you too, Frank.
Great.
37 million new jobs by 2025.
One of the biggest contradictions of massive success is when people go to their moms, their dads, their brother, sister, boyfriend, girlfriend, they say, listen, one day the world's gonna know who I am. One day I will have a Ferrari, the Lambo, the Rolls, the Bentley, the big house, the cars, the backyard with the big swimming pool and an elevator. I'm gonna put the biggest parties. I'm gonna be a millionaire one day. Yet, instead of staying at the office on Friday night, you call your friends and you go party. Instead of waking up Saturday morning to go to the gym, you sleep until 10 o'clock. Instead of reading the book on Sundays, you kick back and watch movies all day long. The reality is very simple. Those who win big, they do 4 things right. They sleep, sweat, grind, repeat. And they do it over and over and over again until their dreams become a reality.
If you can get through to doing things that you hate to do, on the other side is greatness.
You gotta have the mentality to show up every fucking day of your life, no matter what life throws at you. It's our responsibility to show up to the Coliseum of life, prepared for fucking battle. I don't care what you're going through, what life's throwing at you. It's your responsibility to find your new 100%.
You still must grind. I fail at most things I do, but still I grind. I don't want to do half the shit I do, but still I grind. And that one day, you see me on a dark alley, run at 1 o'clock in the morning, know one thing, I was grinding.
Every single day when you wake up, you got 2 options. You can look at the clock and hit the snooze. You can look at that snooze button, boom. You can hit the snooze button and go back to bed and dream about what you want to have. Or you can look at that snooze button, kick that clock and get up and go pursue your dreams.
You need to walk through the mud in life, guys. If you ever want to get to the higher ground. That higher ground is where you look in the mirror and you have respect, and you went through the work, the sweat equity of it all. And the end product is something you can travel, a legacy in life, and you put your signature to. That means something. You're not speaking hollow words. You're backing those motherfuckers up with action.
That's what lions do. Lions don't give up. Lions don't quit. Lions hunt. That's what we do for a living.
I still grind. I love the grind. If you're competing in one of my businesses, I'm gonna kick your ass because I'm gonna outgrind you.
You have to be willing to work in places people don't see.
While the other guy's sleeping, I'm working. While the other guy's eating, I'm working.
There's a motherfucker out there who wants what you have, who wants the position you are, who wants the job you have, who wants the wife that you have, or the husband. There's someone out there hungry and wants everything you can have. So make that a motivation for you.
And mental toughness says, not only do I climb that doggone mountain, I enjoy climbing the mountain. I get a kick out the mountain. I get a kick out the weights. I get a kick out of fatigue. I get a kick out of the grind. I get a kick out of it. You take advantage of this opportunity. You let everything else go. You eat different. You study different. You practice different. We don't have forever. Let's not act like it. We're all going to die. And so I don't act like I'm gonna live forever. So every opportunity I get, I murder it. Process driven. I love it. I'm about that life. I get up every morning at 3 o'clock. When I want to get up, when I don't. When I feel like it and I don't feel like, why? Because I'm process driven. I'm not feelings driven. Champions are not feeling driven. Champions don't get up when they want to. And if we're going to be champions, process driven.
Don't stop when you're tired. Stop when you're done.
Guys, have a great weekend. Thank you.